Hey guys, welcome to part 3 in my tutorial on how to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. This part is going to be about execution, and it's going to be teaching the old Pochmann method for corners, the M2 method for edges, and a few different ways to do parity with old Pochmann corners and M2 edges. So I'm going to start with old Pochmann corners. So we learned in the previous video that we can execute a cube blindfolded just by making a series of swaps between the buffer sticker and the other corner stickers on the cube. The old Pochmann method allows us to do that with just one algorithm. And that algorithm is a modified version of yperm. So you might know yperm, like this, that swaps these two corner stickers and these two edge stickers. And if you know that yperm, it's going to be very easy for you to learn this algorithm, which is just that yperm without the f at the beginning and the f prime at the end. And so if you know that yperm, then it's very easy. Just remove the first and last turn. And if you don't know it, here's the algorithm right here. And that's what it looks like. So without the f and the f prime, instead of swapping these two corner stickers, it swaps this sticker, the buffer, with this sticker, RDF, and it swaps these two edges. So you might be wondering two things. So the first thing you might be wondering is how can we possibly make a swap with the buffer with any sticker on the cube just using this one algorithm? Well, how it works is using setup moves. So let's say we want to, instead of swapping UBL with RFD, or the P location, using my letter scheme, let's say we want to swap it with FDL, or L, using my letter scheme. Well, all we know how to do is do this one algorithm that swaps UBL with RFD. However, if we do a D move, now this sticker that we're trying to swap the buffer with is in this position. And that is called a setup move, because it moves the sticker that from where we don't want it to be into where we want it to be. So then, when we do the algorithm, we then swap what is in UBL with what is now in RFD, and then when we undo the setup move with a D prime, now the overall effect is that the buffer has been swapped with FDL instead of RFD. So every single target on the cube can be solved using the old Pochmann method just by doing a setup move and then that algorithm and then undoing the setup move. And so the other thing you might be wondering, I'm going to go back to setup moves in a second, but the other thing you might be wondering is, well, that's no good. Why are these two edges being swapped? Well, the thing is, we can't just swap two corners on the cube. That's impossible. So what we do is we swap two corners and we also swap these two edges. But every time we do the algorithm, these edges get swapped again and again and again and again. And so overall, they'll either be not swapped at all if we have an even number of targets, or they'll end up swapped, in which case we have parity, which I'll go into in the third part of this video. But what it means, the fact that these two edges get swapped every time, and that here we have the buffer, is that our setup moves can never affect any of these three pieces. Because, let's say we're trying to do this target now. So we want to get this sticker to this spot, so that then when we do our yperm algorithm, the buffer sticker here will be swapped with this sticker in this spot instead of this sticker in this spot. So now you might notice, okay, well, we can get this sticker to right here by doing an F and then an R prime. And you'll see that none of any of these pieces were affected by that. So we just do our algorithm and then we undo the setup move and we're good. We have swapped these two corners and these two edges have been swapped. Now you might also notice that we can get this sticker to here by doing U prime F. However, you'll notice that when we did U prime F, all three of the pieces over here were moved. And so what happens is that the sticker that's here is no longer the buffer sticker, and the two edges that are here and here are no longer the two edges that we want to get swapped every time. And so when we do our Y-perm algorithm, we'll be swapping the wrong sticker and the wrong two edges, and we'll basically ruin our blind solve. So just keep it as a rule that the only turns that you can make in your setup moves are R, F, and D, because the turns B, L, and U all would destroy the positioning of these three important pieces. So here the correct setup move is FR prime, because it moves the sticker here, which is our target, down to here, which is this spot, which is the target spot for every executed target using old Pochmann. So a little bit about the setup moves. Every setup move can be solved with 0, 1, or 2 moves. So of course the only case with 0 moves is this target right here, which is the P target. And so for that one, you just do the algorithm, because it's already prepared to set up UBL with RDF, or P using my letter scheme. Then there are the one move setups. These should be the easiest to see, because these are just the stickers that are one move away from the RDF position. So all of the one move targets, well, we can only turn R, F, and D, so all the single move targets must be on one of those turns. So the ones on the R turn are just these stickers inside here, because we can do an R prime for this one, we can do an R2 for that one, and we can do an R for that one. And then on the D layer, our setup moves are the ones that are around the D layer that can interchange with RDF. So this one, for example, can get there with just a D. This one can get to RDF with a D2. And this one here can get to RDF with a D prime. And then on making F turns, we then have this one, and this one, which are just some sort of F move away. Then the two move ones just involve moving the target to one of those spots that you can get to RDF in one move from, and then making that one move. So for example, this target here, B using my letter scheme, or UBR, you can get to RDF by doing an R, which moves it to this position, which is just one move away, one D prime away from here. And then you would do your Y perm, and then you could undo it. So I'm going to do an example solve using old Pochmann corners. All of the setup moves that you need for each target are in the description. Before looking at those, I recommend you find them for yourself. And your goal is just to get comfortable to the point where you can solve each target with your eyes closed, just by doing a setup move, doing the Y perm, and then undoing the setup move. And that's really all there is to old Pochmann corners. So, and just the most important thing is just to remember how you did your setup move, because for some pieces there might be more than one way you could do your setup move. And so, for example, this piece, this target right here, FUR or J, using my letter scheme, you might notice that you can get it to here with one move, F2, and then to there, D. But you should remember that that's how you got it there, and that you didn't, for example, use R2D prime, which also gets it to RDF. And so the other thing is that you can also just find patterns here. For example, anything on the R face can be gotten to RDF with one R move. Anything on the F face, though, can be gotten to FDL with one F move, and then with one, so either this one to there, for example, but then it's just one D away from there. And then the same thing with the bottom. Any of the bottom stickers can get to DFL with one move. And then from DFL, you can get to RDF with one move. And so, you can find patterns like that. And the setup moves should not be too difficult for you if you have a good understanding of the cube. So I'm going to mix up the corners of this cube now. And I'm just going to do an example memorization and execution. So here we go. So what's our memorization for this position? Well, we start here. I'm kind of going to go through this a little bit quickly. And we go over here to O, and then this needs to go over here, which is U, and this needs to go here, and that's D, and this needs to go here, and that's B, and this needs to go there, and that's K, and K goes to M, and M is on the buffer piece, and but we haven't solved. And M is on the buffer piece, but we haven't solved all of the corners yet because we have a twisted corner back here. So our memo so far was OU, DB, KM. And then for this piece, we can choose, remember, to break into a twisted corner cycle, we just choose any of these stickers. I'll choose this one, which is S. And then from S, we go to H. We could also have chosen any of the other two, but I just chose S. So let's start with our first letter. It's O, so it's right here. That one is very easy. It's just an R move away from our RFD. So we do an R, and then our Y perm, and then an R prime. And then here we have U, and that's over here. U is also just one move away. It's just an F prime away from RDF. So we do our Y perm, and then we do our F again. And then here we have our next target was D from our memorization. And so D, you can do an F and then an R prime to get it to RDF. And so do your Y perm and then RF prime. And our next target is B. And so B, you can do RD prime and then Y perm. And that's how corner execution is going to go, except you'll have to do it blindfolded. And so then K here, we can do a D to move it over here, then an R to get it to RDF. And then here we have this target here, which is just an R prime and R. And then remember we memorize this twisted corner as SH. So for S, we can do a D prime to move S to there, and then an R prime D. And then here we have H, which is right there, and that's just a D2 away, Y perm, D2. And that's old Pochmann corners. So it's as simple as for each target that you've memorized, just do a setup move, do a Y perm, and then undo the setup move. So M2 for edges is a little bit different. And it's different in that instead of doing a Y perm, we just do M2. And you might be a little confused about how that works. How can we just do one move instead of a long algorithm? Well, I'm going to explain that. So if you don't understand this explanation, I recommend you can try and watch it again and understand it, or you can go just to the end of this tutorial, and I'm going to show how the setup moves work. And as long as you understand how the setup moves work, you don't necessarily need to understand how M2 itself works, although that will probably help. So if we look at the move M2, we need to not look at it as a move that spins a whole slice around. We need to look at it as a move that does two things. So just like how our Y perm that we used for old Pochmann swapped this corner sticker with this corner sticker and swapped these two edge stickers, because you can't just swap two corners, if we look at M2, keeping in mind that our buffer is DF, or U using my letter scheme, what we can do is we can see, okay, so DF has been swapped with UB. Okay, so that takes care of the part that's analogous to this corner sticker being swapped with that corner sticker. That's the part we care about. Now what about the rest of the algorithm? Well, it would seem that this edge has also been swapped with this edge. And that's what we're defining as being equivalent to an old Pochmann, these two edges being swapped. So if we look at it, what happens is we swap these two corners, and we swap these two edges, and we also swap these centers, and we also swap these two sets of centers. So basically, everything on the M slice gets swapped. But there's one swap that we care about, which is the swap between DF and UB, and the swap that just happens to happen at the same time is the swap between these two centers and this edge, and these two centers and this edge. So just like how with old Pochmann, our goal was to bring our corner stickers over to RDF with a setup move that does not destroy either the buffer or either of these two edges that get swapped. With M2, our target spot is UB, of course, because that's where DF gets swapped with when we do M2. And the things that we can't destroy, well, it's basically everything else on the M slice. We can't destroy any of these three pieces or any of these three pieces. Because just like in the example in old Pochmann, where when we moved, any of these three pieces, it got messed up. In the same way, if we either move the buffer or the things that get swapped incidentally, we're going to get messed up. So we need a way to create setup moves. That will not break anything on the M slice except for this target piece. And so I'm going to be breaking this down into 3 different kinds of targets. So the first kind of target that I'm going to talk about are the outer targets. So the outer targets I'm going to define as the ones on the outside of the right layer and the outside of the left layer for a total of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the inner targets are going to be these over here. And I'm going to talk about those second, and these over here. So the outer targets can all be moved into the buffer position with some kind of R move and then some kind of U move. So this one I'm sorry, this is not the buffer position, the target position. So this one just needs a U prime to get there. This one needs an R prime and then a U prime to get there. And this one needs an R and then a U prime to get there. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, we can't do that because we're breaking the M slice each time. Because when I'll do it an M2 off just to show you. When we do this, we're breaking, some of our pieces that we cannot move doing our setup move. And if we want to move this one there, R2 U prime, we're still breaking those pieces. So what can we do to allow us to do an R and then a U prime move? Well, there's a pretty easy solution, which is if we do a U first. So let's say this is our target here, doing a U first and then an R and then a U prime means we've broken our M slice sort of in the other direction, and then we do an R to move the correct piece into place, and then we do a U prime, and our M slice has been fixed. And then we do our M2, which again swaps these 3 with these 3, and the buffer with this piece up there, and then we do U, R prime, U prime. And so the end result is that our buffer here has been swapped with this sticker right here, and this sticker hasn't moved, but these 3 pieces and these 3 pieces that get swapped every time have been swapped. And let's say we want to do another target. Let's say it's this one right here, which is V using my letter scheme. Then, okay, well, we can use the same exact technique, U, R2, U prime. So exactly in the same way, the U breaks the M layer, M slice, and then the R2 puts the correct piece that we want in the right place, and then U prime, M2, U, R2, U prime. And there you go. This is so that's how we would solve those 2 outer targets using the M2 method. So the left side outer targets work in the exact same way as the right side ones do, except with except the mirror. So we can do a U prime to break the M layer slice in the other direction, and then some sort of L move, and then a U. So for this one, we would do U prime L prime U, M2, and then undo the setup move. So M2 might seem very different from old Pochmann in that we're just doing one move instead of a whole Y perm. However, really it's the same concepts, just approached from a different angle. So the only other thing to talk about the outer targets are these 2 targets here and here. You might notice that doing a U prime, well, let's say this is our target, doing a U prime, moving this here, well, we've moved it into the wrong place. We can't do an R to move it into where we want it to go. So instead, what we do, doing a U, if it's on the right, moving this one here, we then can't move it to there. So all we do is an R prime first, and then we do a U, R U prime, and it's there. So we're just doing an R prime and then executing it like it's this target, and then U R U prime, M2, and then undo it to there, and then do the R again. And so the left target is the exact same way. We just, if we want to do U prime and then some kind of move there, and then back to U, so instead what we do is we do an L, and then we do U prime, L prime, U to get it up there. M2, U prime, L, U, L prime to undo that first move. And so that's the only sort of special case out of the outer targets. So now the inner targets on the right and left are the same as the outer targets, except that you'll notice we cannot use U to do them, because when we do a U, we're sort of moving the target sticker so that any of the outer targets can go in. So the simple solution to this problem is that instead of doing a U move, we make a B move. And this moves the target position over here, and so then we can move any of these targets into there. So if this is our target, for example, we can do B prime, R2, B. And now this target is in there. And so all the inner targets are just the same as the outer targets, except we use B moves to catch it. And so if you just think about it as you're catching the piece, like for this target, we were just doing a U and then catching the piece, it's very easy to think about. So for example, for this target, since it's an inner target, we just remember that for inner targets, we do a B move to catch it. So we do B, and then we catch it with L, B prime, and then our M2, and B, L prime, B prime to undo it. And then if we want to do our next target as this target, we just do B prime, R2B, M2, B prime, R2B, catching it with the B layer. So to recap what we've learned so far, we've learned that inner targets and outer targets can be solved with 3-move setup moves that just follow the pattern of either a U move if it's an outer target, or a B move if it's an inner target, and then some adjustment of the right layer, and then undo it. So again, just like how we had the special targets over here for the outer targets, here we have these two special targets for the inner targets. There are two ways you can solve these. The more intuitive way is to do an R, just like how for this one we did an R prime before setting it up like that. Here for this one we can do an R, so that then when we do the B, we can just catch it with an R prime, B prime. B prime, R prime, B, M2, B prime, RB, and then undo the R move, and then M2, or M2 if, okay, and then whatever our next target is. So, and then the other way to do that target is just to use this little trick, wide U, R, wide U prime. And I'm not going to explain why that works right now, but you can probably see for yourself. Basically just adjusts it and moves it at the same time. So all of the algorithms for the targets are going to be in the description, but I encourage you to try and understand it yourself so that it makes sense. So those 8 targets, the 8 inner targets and the 8 outer targets, can just be solved using either a U for the outer targets and a B for the inner targets. There are 6 other targets, as you may have noticed, and these are the ones that are on the M slice. And these I call these special targets because they're special and you're just going to need to learn the algorithms for them. I'll try and make learning those algorithms as easy as possible though. So the easiest of the special targets is just UB. And this is analogous to our RFD position for old Pochmann corners, because this is just the target spot. Because for old Pochmann corners, this was the spot where there was no setup move, because that's just the spot that it's automatically swapped with. So if you ever get UB in a solve, you should count yourself as lucky, because you don't even need your 3-move setup move from before. You just need to do an M2 and it's solved. And so that's very simple. Because that just swaps these 2 edges and are pieces that get swapped around every time. So then you've got this target, BU, or Q, using my letter scheme. And, well, Q, we can't solve it just using an M2 because it's there and not there. So we need some algorithm that will flip it over, but leave it in the same place without affecting the rest of the M slice. And so the algorithm that does that is B prime RB, U R2 U prime. flips it while leaving the M slice the same, and then M2, U, R2, U prime, B prime, R prime, B. And then you're ready to do whatever your next target is, for example. So now I just did Q and then J, and now to solve it again, we would do J and then Q. And so if we want to break down what this algorithm does, it basically just sets up, it basically just takes this from here, throws it out with the B, it throws it out with the B layer into here and catches it with the U layer. And that has the overall effect of flipping it over. And the other 4 targets are special in a different way from these two. And those are special in that it matters whether they are even targets or odd targets. So first I'm just going to show you the algorithms for each one. So here we have UF or C using my letter scheme, and the algorithm for that is very easy. It's just U2 M prime, U2 M prime. And down here we have W or DB, and the algorithm for that one is just the inverse of that, MU2, MU2. And here we have I, and this is sort of the only longish algorithm you're going to have to learn for M2. It's 10 moves long, or FU if you're not using my letter scheme. So that's just D, M prime, U, R2, U prime, M, U, R2, U prime, D prime. And then an M2 at the end. So again, all of these algorithms are in the description if you don't think I'm doing a good enough job showing you them. And then the last one is just DB or S, and that's just the inverse of the I algorithm. So it starts with the M2, and then D, U, R2, U prime, M prime, U, R2, U prime, M, D prime, M2. So, I'm sorry, with no M2 at the end. And then whatever your next target is. So, so these are the 6 M slice targets, and these are special in that these edges here and here are part of the pieces that we swap each time we do a target. So if you'll remember, for corners, we never ran into that problem because the 2 pieces that we swapped every time were edges, and so we were just doing corner targets. But for M2, we are swapping these 2 edges every time, but what if one of those edges comes up as a target? Well, this is where the even odd things comes in, and this is the only thing that I think most people get tripped up about during M2. So if the M slice is fine, you just do the algorithm. But if the M slice is off by 2, then your target is no longer, so let's say I set this up, right? So here I have J and then C. That's my whole edge cycle. Well, I do the J algorithm, right, which is just a simple outer target catching with the U layer. And suddenly I'm going to do C, but C isn't in its normal spot. It's down here. So I execute it as if it's W. And so I do the W algorithm instead, and I'm good. So all it is if you have an odd target, like the first target, the third target, the fifth target, then you do the normal algorithm. And if you have an even target, like the second, the fifth, the fourth, or the sixth target, you do the algorithm for the opposite piece, which also happens to be the inverse of the algorithm. So if you have I as your second target, you do S, or FU, you do BD. And if you have BD as your second target, you do it as FU instead. And same, and UF and DB swap with each other in the same way. In the next video, I'll be showing you how to memorize using letter pairs. And using a letter pair, it's very easy to tell when you have whether you're on the first or the second one, because if you memorize in a pair of letters, you know whether you're on the first one or the second one when you're executing a certain letter. So, yep, that's M2. Okay, so before moving on to parity, I'm going to do one quick example solve using M2. Obviously, a lot of the edges are solved. Since this video is kind of long already, I don't want it to take too long. So the memorization is going to be, I'm just going to use my letters for it, but I'm going to point to the correct spots. O, D, R, M, W, I. Okay, so O here is just an inner target, so I'm going to catch it with B, B prime R prime B, M2, B prime R B. Okay, and my next target is D, which is right here. So it's an outer target, so I'm going to catch it with the U layer, but this is the one where I need to do a setup move first. So L, and then U prime L prime U, M2, U prime L, U, L prime. And there we go. Now here and there are solved. And over here, we've got R, or BL, and so U prime L, U. Okay, so and then I should memorize the next target too. After R, it's going to be M, because in M2 you do targets in pairs, of course, where the M slice gets swapped around. So U prime L, U, because it's an outer target, so U prime L, U, M2, U prime L prime U, and that one's solved, and the M slice is off by 2. And then this one here is an inner target, so catch it with B, B prime R B, M2, B prime R prime B. And the M slice is back to normal, and this one is solved. So our last two targets are W and then I. So thinking about this for a second, W, so W and I are both among the 4 targets that are special. So remember that these 2 targets, although they're special in that they're on the M slice, they are still executed the same way every time. Whereas W and I are both targets where it depends on whether it's an odd target or an even target. So since W is an odd target, we can just do our normal algorithm for it. But now we get to I, and since I is an even target and the M slice is off by 2, instead we do the S algorithm, or the BD algorithm instead. And it's solved. Okay, so before you go into doing solves on your cube, using blindfolded execution with old Pochmann and M2, there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that's parity. So you may have noticed that if you have an odd number of corner targets, then these 2 edges have been swapped an odd number of times using the old Pochmann method, and therefore end up swapped. And if you're using the M2 method for edges, and you have an odd number of edge targets, then the M layer ends up swapped an odd number of times, and therefore ends up an M2 off. And so this is a problem, because we want them to end up solved. Fortunately, if you have parity with your corners, you also have parity with your edges. So if you have an odd number of corner targets, you have an odd number of edge targets, and vice versa. So what that means is we just need to add a little thing that we do every solve called a parity fix, and then we're good to go. And fortunately, in the next video, I'll be teaching you how to memorize using letter pairs. So it'll be very easy to tell when you have parity, because there'll be an extra letter dangling at the end of your memorization. But more about that in the next video. For now, I'm just going to show you how you can execute parity. So in the next video, I'm going to show you the pros and cons of solving corners first and edges first. And so here I have to show you one parity method for solving corners first and one parity method for solving edges first. So if you solve the edges first, I think parity is a little bit easier. What you do is just in between solving edges and corners, you do one algorithm. That algorithm is D prime L2D, M2, D prime L2D. So I'm now just going to show you how that works. So I'm going to set up a very, very, very simple scramble. That's going to look like this. So our corner memorization is just P, and our edge memorization is just A. So, okay, so let's say we want to execute the edges first. So we execute our edges, we do A, and that's our last edge, and we notice, okay, we had an odd number of edge targets, and the M slice is off by an M2, and so we do this algorithm, D prime L2D, M2, D prime L2D. And the effect of that is that these 2 edges are now swapped, and our M layer is fixed, and the buffer is solved. So now these 2 edges are swapped, we'll do our odd number of corner targets, which is just P, and they'll end up solved. So let's say we want to do our we want to execute our corners first. So I'm going to set up the same exact scramble. The way I recommend to do, what I recommend to do if you solve your corners first, is to, well, there are two ways you can do it. The first thing you can do is after your last corner target, when these two have been swapped an odd number of times, you can't really then go solve your edges because these two will be swapped. So what you can do instead is you can then add this target to the end, which is UBR or B using my letter scheme, which is just an RD prime setup move to a Y perm and DR prime. So now these two corners end up swapped in the end, and these two edges are back in their normal positions. So then you solve your edges, and the M slice is off by an M2, and then at the end of solving your edges, you just do another M2, and then so you solve your corners, you do this extra corner target, and then at the end of solving your edges, you do an M2, and then do a Y and do an L2 setup to a T perm, then undo the L2, and you're good. So the other way that you can do parity, if you want to execute your corners first, is just use the same parity method as before, but leave one corner for the end. And so what that means is let's say you have a bunch of corner targets and a bunch of edge targets. So I want to execute my corners first. So my corner memo is it's PTL, and my edge memo is just A. So I'll do my P, and then I'll do my T, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave L until the end. So now these two have been swapped an even number of times, and then I'm going to execute my edges, and I get to the end of my edges, and you can just do parity the same way as if you are as if you had executed the edges first. And then these two are swapped now, and you can do your final corner target. So the only difficult thing about that is that you have to remember one of your corner targets for a little longer. More about that in the next video. So just play around with those parity fixes, and you're probably going to have to come back to this video when you're actually choosing what order you want to memorize the pieces in. So thanks for watching, and leave your comments below.